I arrived at the house just before sunset. It was tucked away at the edge of a small town I'd never heard of until the listing popped up on Airbnb. The photos had a sort of rustic charm: weathered wood paneling, thick velvet curtains, old light fixtures with that dull brass patina. It felt a little too quiet when I pulled into the gravel driveway, but that was kind of the point. I needed quiet. Space. The host's name was Helen. She'd messaged me 3 times that morning, first with check-in instructions, then a reminder about the Wi-Fi password, and finally a note that caught me off guard. "One quick thing, there may be an older uncle in the basement. He lives down there full-time. Harmless. Just don't disturb him. He's not very social." I reread that message 3 times, sitting in my car with the engine still running. I'd almost backed out right then, but I'd already paid, and I couldn't afford a hotel. Plus, I'd stayed in weirder places before. Once, in a shack in Vermont, the owner had kept an entire room full of taxidermy raccoons. That was worse. Probably. So I got out. Stretched my legs. Walked up to the porch and keyed in the code Helen had sent me. The lock clicked, and the door creaked open just a little too slowly, like the air was thick on the other side. Inside, it was darker than I expected, even with the curtains open. Musty smell. Clean but old. Like a house that had been preserved more than lived in. I walked through the hallway, hardwood floors groaning under my steps, and dropped my bag by the couch. The kitchen was to the left. Bedroom down the hall. Bathroom near the back. And then, by the fridge, a door with 3 thick deadbolts, all unlocked but clearly functional. The basement door. It was shut, but I could tell by the way it leaned slightly, like someone had opened it just an inch or 2 and then changed their mind. I didn't touch it. Instead, I poured myself a glass of water, sat on the couch, and told myself this would be fine. Just a quiet weekend. No roommates. No boyfriend drama. No city noise. Just me. And maybe, the uncle. That first evening passed in a kind of uneasy calm. I made some pasta, watched a couple episodes of some trashy dating show, and tried not to keep glancing at the basement door. The house was cold. Not freezing, just stubbornly cool, like it held on to a chill no matter how high I nudged the thermostat. And it creaked a lot. The kind of creaking that makes you stop mid-bite and stare at the ceiling, wondering if someone's walking above you. But this house only had 1 floor. Above me was just roof. I kept reminding myself, old houses do that. Old pipes bang. Old floorboards moan. Maybe that's why Helen felt the need to mention the uncle, so people wouldn't freak out if they heard something and assumed the place was haunted. But around 11 p.m., as I was brushing my teeth, I heard something I couldn't explain away with creaky boards. Footsteps. Soft ones. Shuffling. On the tile floor of the kitchen. I froze, toothbrush still in my mouth, toothpaste foam starting to drip down my chin. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. It was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking in the living room. Then a voice. Barely above a whisper. Claire. My name. Drawn out, almost like a song. Claire. I turned off the bathroom light and leaned out into the hallway. The kitchen light was still on, casting a yellow glow across the linoleum. No one was there. I walked slowly, quietly, heart hammering against my ribs. Every step felt louder than the last. I made it to the kitchen and looked around. Empty. I checked the front door. Still locked, chain and all. And then I glanced over at the basement door. Still shut. But now, one of the deadbolts was latched. I hadn't touched it. And I swear, they were all open when I got there. I stood there for a long time, staring at that bolt. It was the top one, crooked and a little stiff, but clearly fastened tight. I told myself I was tired. Maybe I had locked it myself without thinking. But when I went back to the bedroom, I slid a chair under the doorknob. Just in case. And I left the hallway light on. I didn't sleep well. Every time I closed my eyes, I half expected to hear that voice again, just barely audible, slithering out of the dark corners of the house. But nothing else happened that night. Just silence. Cold, aching silence. Like the house was holding its breath. When I woke up, the hallway light had burned out. The bulb was still warm to the touch, but dead. I made coffee. Stronger than usual. Sat at the tiny kitchen table and stared at the basement door. I didn't want to admit how much it was bothering me. But I kept thinking about that bolt. How it had moved. How someone, something, had whispered my name. And then I had this awful thought, what if the uncle had come upstairs? What if Helen had lied about him staying in the basement? What if he wandered up in the middle of the night, and just stood there? Watching me? I needed to clear my head. So I opened the windows, let in some light, and started poking around the house, just exploring. There wasn't much. A few shelves with old books and ceramic figurines. A stack of crossword puzzle magazines from 2009. A locked closet near the back of the hallway that wouldn't budge no matter how hard I tugged. But then I found something strange, wedged in the back of the living room bookshelf, behind a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird and a dusty bird encyclopedia. A photograph. It was old, like decades old. The corners were curled, and the color had faded into that weird pinkish hue that happens when film's left out too long. It showed a man standing in front of the house. Same porch. Same wood paneling. He was tall and narrow, dressed in a wool coat buttoned all the way up to his chin. But his face. It wasn't right. It was too smooth. No real features. Just the vague suggestion of a mouth and eyes, like someone had taken a smudgy eraser to it. And yet, I couldn't stop staring. Something about it felt familiar. Like I'd seen him before. I flipped the photo over. There was a note scribbled in pencil. Don't let him come upstairs. That was it. Just that. I stood there for a long time, gripping the photo like it might vanish if I blinked. Then, from behind me, deep in the house, I heard a low creak. Like someone stepping on that loose floorboard near the bathroom. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. I turned around. No one was there. I didn't even remember moving at first. 1 second I was staring down the hallway, and the next I was standing in the kitchen again, photo still in hand, listening. Nothing. But I knew what I'd heard. It wasn't just the house settling, or the wind. It was a footstep. A slow, heavy one. Like someone who didn't want to be heard but wasn't trying too hard to be quiet either. I stood there, trying to get a grip on myself. Then I did the dumbest thing I've done in a long time. I walked to the basement door. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was some stupid sense of defiance. Like if I opened the door and saw nothing, I could get some control back. Make the fear feel less real. I reached for the top deadbolt. The one that had mysteriously locked itself the night before. Still latched. But the middle one? Unlocked. The bottom one? Gone. Not just unlocked, gone. Like it had been unscrewed from the door entirely. My hand started to shake. I slowly twisted the knob and cracked the door open. Just a sliver. The air that hit me was wrong. Heavy, damp, metallic, like old blood and mildew. I couldn't see anything beyond the first few steps. The light switch on the wall didn't work. When I flipped it, I heard a clicking sound, but no bulb lit up below. I leaned forward, trying to make out anything in the dark. That's when I heard it. A dry, wheezing breath, just below the first landing. Like someone had been holding their breath and finally let it out. I slammed the door and threw every bolt I could. I stood there, back pressed against the door, waiting to hear footsteps. Another whisper. Something. But it stayed quiet. Still, that breath. It was real. I know it was real. It was too close, too present to be my imagination. I picked up my phone and opened the Airbnb app. Pulled up Helen's number. I was halfway through typing a message when I stopped and noticed something that made my stomach twist. Her profile was gone. Not deactivated, just gone. Like it had never existed. The listing was still there, but now it just said, "This property is managed by the owner. No contact available." What the hell did that mean? I backed out of the app, heart in my throat. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to leave, right then and there. But my keys weren't where I left them. The hook by the door? Empty. I looked around. Checked the couch cushions. My bag. The kitchen table. Nothing. That was when I heard it again. From under the floorboards this time. Just below the kitchen. A voice. Low. Ragged. Almost a whisper, but clearer than last time. Claire, you said you wouldn't disturb me. I backed away from the kitchen slowly, like whatever was under the floorboards could see me if I moved too fast. My knees were trembling. I nearly tripped over the rug. You said you wouldn't disturb me. That line repeated itself in my head over and over, like it had been carved there. I hadn't said anything to him. I hadn't even acknowledged the basement until that moment. But the way he said it, like we had an agreement. Like I had broken something. I locked myself in the bedroom and shoved the dresser in front of the door. There were no texts, no updates, no way to contact Helen or anyone connected to the listing. I even tried calling Airbnb's emergency number, but the hold music played for 10 full minutes before the line just clicked off. I felt trapped. And the silence in that house was worse than noise. Every tiny creak became a threat. Every draft felt like breath on my neck. And then the scratching started. It was faint at first. Like nails on cardboard. From under the bed. My first instinct was to lift the covers and look, but something deep in my gut told me not to. Instead, I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and crouched down slowly, inch by inch, until I could peer underneath. Nothing. Just dust, a slipper I didn't recognize, and a thick black wire I hadn't noticed before, running from the wall and disappearing through a small hole in the floorboards. I followed it with the light. It went straight down. Into the basement. That was when the scratching stopped. And something breathed back at me. I jerked upright so fast I hit my head on the nightstand. I must have blacked out for a second, because when I opened my eyes, everything was dark. My phone was dead. I swear it had at least 40% battery left. I reached for the lamp and twisted the switch. Nothing. The power was out. The only light in the room came from a faint red glow, coming through the crack beneath the bedroom door. Like someone had turned on an old heat lamp in the hallway. But there was no sound. No footsteps. No creaking. Just that glow. And the feeling that something was standing right outside the door. Waiting. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't even breathe. Until I heard it again. Soft. Like a lullaby. Come down, Claire. We used to talk, remember? You used to listen. That voice chilled something ancient in me. Not just fear, something worse. Recognition. Like part of me did know it. Like maybe this wasn't the first time I'd heard it whisper in the dark. But that was impossible. I'd never been here before. Never met this so-called uncle. Right. I sat in the corner of the bedroom for what felt like hours, knees hugged to my chest, watching that red glow creep under the door. It pulsed sometimes. Like it was alive. Eventually it faded. The lights flickered back on. Just like that. And then silence. Still and complete. I waited 5 more minutes before moving the dresser. Every bone in my body protested the idea, but I had to know if I was losing it. If someone was actually in the house with me. I opened the bedroom door. The hallway was empty. No footprints, no red light, no sound. And right in the center of the hallway, placed carefully on the floor, was something that hadn't been there before. A book. Hardcover. Brown leather. Faded gold embossing on the front that read simply, Guests. I didn't want to touch it. But of course I did. Inside were handwritten entries. Dozens of them. Names, dates, little notes. Loved the fireplace, such a cozy stay. Uncle never bothered us. Very quiet. But the further I flipped, the more the tone shifted. He knocked on the wall all night. We didn't answer. Don't look him in the eyes. I made that mistake. And then, about 10 pages from the back, I saw my name. Claire. Dated 3 years ago. My throat went dry. The entry was written in my handwriting. There was no doubt. But I'd never been here before. Never rented this place. Never even heard of it until last week. The note was short. A single line. This time, don't forget who you are. I dropped the book like it burned me. My hands were shaking. My knees weak. None of this made sense. Unless this wasn't my first time here. Unless I'd been here before. And left something behind. My phone buzzed then, out of nowhere, like it had resurrected itself. One notification. An image file. No number. No sender. I opened it. It was a photo of me, standing in the kitchen, looking straight at the camera. But I hadn't taken it. And in the background, just barely visible through the cracked basement door, was a man. In a wool coat. Smiling. I dropped the phone. It clattered across the floor, screen still glowing. I backed away from it like it might explode. My reflection in the photo didn't even look startled. I looked calm. Serene. Like I knew the man behind me was there. Like I was waiting for him. I could barely breathe. That smile, his smile, it wasn't warm. It wasn't even human. It was the kind of smile that made your skin crawl, all teeth and calculation. The kind of smile someone wears when they know something you don't. I picked the phone back up, heart pounding, and flipped back to the photo. Zoomed in. The man in the coat wasn't standing. He was leaning against the inside of the basement door. And the door was open wider than I remembered. I felt lightheaded. Nauseous. None of this made sense. I couldn't have been here before. I would remember something like this. This kind of fear doesn't leave you. Right. Unless someone took the memory away. That thought hit me like a punch to the chest. What if that guest book entry, the handwriting, the warning, wasn't some elaborate trick? What if I had been here, exactly here, before? What if I walked through these same rooms, sat on this couch, heard that voice, and forgot? I sat down, shaking, trying to piece together why. Why would I come back? And then it occurred to me. I hadn't chosen this listing. I remembered searching for places out of town, yes, but I never remembered clicking this one. I never favorited it. Never messaged the host. What if the house had chosen me? I rushed to my email and pulled up the confirmation for the Airbnb reservation. It wasn't there. No receipt. No booking confirmation. Not even a payment alert from my bank. The app said I was checked in, sure, but there was no record of me ever booking this place. I wasn't just alone. I was off the map. I stood slowly, panicking now, and opened the door to the hallway closet I hadn't been able to open yesterday. This time, it swung open easily, like it had never been locked at all. Inside were boxes. Old cardboard taped shut. I picked one at random and pulled it open. Photos. Hundreds of them. Maybe more. All Polaroids. All with names written on the back. I started flipping through them fast. My hands were cold, my breath shallow. So many faces. Most of them looking straight into the camera. Some smiling. Some not. Then I found her. A photo of me. Younger, maybe by a few years. My hair was shorter. I was standing on the same porch, wearing a jacket I don't own anymore. The back said, Claire. Third stay. Still doesn't remember. I couldn't move. My picture, my face, in a box full of strangers. Third stay. Not first. Not second. Third. I stared at that word until the letters stopped making sense. Still doesn't remember. My knees buckled and I sat hard on the floor, the air buzzing in my ears. How was this possible? How could I not remember coming here twice before? And why would I ever come back? Unless I didn't have a choice. Unless I never left. I thought of the photo on my phone, the man in the basement doorway, and how calm I looked. Too calm. Like I knew him. like we were familiar. That was when I noticed something else in the closet. Behind the boxes, tucked in the shadows, was a coat. Old wool, long, with those same oversized buttons. My throat clenched. It was his coat. I didn't take it out. I didn't want to touch it. But the smell hit me anyway. Damp earth, iron, and something else. Memory. That's the only way I can describe it. Like a sudden, vivid flash of something you can't place, but feel in your bones. I backed away. The moment I stepped into the hallway again, I heard the noise. A rhythmic, scraping sound. Wood against wood. Coming from the kitchen. I crept forward, slowly, careful not to make the floorboards groan. As I got closer, I realized what it was. The basement door was swinging open. Just a few inches. Then closing again. Over and over. Like someone was nudging it from below. Like they were inviting me down. I didn't want to go. But something in me did. Some deep, primal part of my brain that wasn't afraid. That was curious. Drawn to it. Like I'd gone down before. Like I belonged down there. That part of me was stronger than I thought. I reached out. The door creaked open with the soft resistance of old hinges. The stairs descended into blackness. No light. No switch. But I could hear something. A slow tapping, like fingers drumming on a wooden table. And then, a voice. Not a whisper this time. Clear. Almost gentle. Claire. You're doing better this time. I should have run. Instead, I stepped onto the first stair. Then the second. The darkness welcomed me. That's the only word that fits. And as I descended into the pitch black, something at the base of the stairs flickered to life. A light bulb. Dangling. Swaying. And underneath it, sitting calmly in an old armchair like he'd been waiting for me all along, was the man in the coat. Only this time, he wasn't smiling. The bulb above him flickered, casting shadows that twitched like insects on the basement walls. The man, he, sat perfectly still. Hands folded in his lap. Head tilted slightly, like he was studying me. His face was clearer now. Not blank like in the photo. He had features, thin lips, pale skin, dark eyes that didn't seem to blink. But there was something wrong with his expression. Like it didn't fit the face it was on. Like he was trying to remember how to look human. I stood frozen on the stairs. He didn't speak at first. Just stared. And then finally softly. You look older this time. My mouth was so dry I couldn't form a response. I had 100 questions, 1,000, all crashing into each other in my head, but none of them made it out. He nodded slowly, like he understood. I didn't think you'd come back. Not after what happened last time. I gripped the railing hard. My voice came out thinner than I meant. What happened last time? He leaned forward slightly, and the bulb's sway made his face glide in and out of the dark. You forgot me, he said. Again. Something deep inside me recoiled, like I touched a stove and my brain recognized the burn. A sliver of memory flashed, uninvited. Me. Down here. Screaming. And him, not like this, not calm, but angry. Furious. His voice louder. His face different. More open. More wrong. You asked to forget? He said. You begged. You said it was too much. But you always come back. You find me again. I didn't. I swallowed hard. I didn't find you. I don't remember. He smiled. Barely. Because forgetting doesn't erase what you are, Claire. The way he said my name, it wasn't just a name. It was a title. Like he knew more about me than I ever had. What am I? I asked. Why do I keep coming back here? The man reached into his coat and pulled something out. He held it up for me to see. A small black tape recorder. I keep a record, he said. For every visit. Every session. Session? He nodded. That's what you used to call them. I've never had a session here. I'm not a... Claire, he interrupted, voice firmer now. You used to be the one in control. You chose this. You built this place. You brought me into it. I felt like the floor was tilting under me. You're lying, I whispered. I'm not, he said simply. You're just still inside the forgetting. He pressed play on the tape. And I heard my own voice. Clear. Calm. Confident. Saying things I had no memory of. He's adapting faster now. The persona is stable. I think I can push further next time. Then another voice, his, responding. But you're bleeding into it, Claire. You know that. You're getting lost. The tape clicked off. I staggered back a step. No. That's not me. I never. You've done this over and over, he said, standing now. The house. The rules. Me in the basement. You made this narrative. You test yourself inside it. Why? His eyes were sad now. Almost sympathetic. Because you needed to see if you could escape something you built to trap other people. That's when the air in the basement shifted. Warped. The walls breathed, just once, and I heard the whisper again. But this time, it was coming from inside my own head. Don't forget again. I stumbled backward against the stair railing, suddenly unsure if the steps I'd taken down were even real. My brain felt too loud. Like there was a second version of me trapped behind my own eyes, screaming to be heard. You're lying, I said again, though it didn't sound convincing. Not even to myself. The man in the coat stepped aside, motioning behind him. There was a trapdoor in the concrete floor. I hadn't seen it when I came down, it blended perfectly with the cracked gray cement. But now it was just there. Slightly ajar. A thin seam of flickering yellow light pulsing from the edges. You left this open, he said. Last time. After what happened to the boy. I froze. What boy? He looked at me. A long, tired look. Then he reached into his coat again, same slow, deliberate motion, and pulled out something new. A photograph. I didn't want to look at it. My body knew before my mind did that it would hurt to see. But I looked anyway. It was me. Younger again. Sitting on the couch upstairs. And next to me, maybe 10 or 11 years old, was a boy. Pale hair. Big eyes. He was looking directly at the camera. I don't have a brother. I don't. Who is that? I asked, voice shaking. The man handed me the photo. Your trial subject. I wanted to scream. Instead, I whispered, What are you talking about? You were testing memory boundaries. Seeing if trauma could be induced, and then selectively wiped. You thought if you could erase the horror, the brain might heal faster. You used the boy as your control. No. No, stop. I clutched my temples. That's not me. I didn't do this. You were brilliant, he said, as if I hadn't spoken. You built layers of narrative. Fiction within fiction. And when guilt started bleeding through, you locked it beneath the story you thought you could outrun. He tapped the trapdoor with the toe of his boot. But it always leaks back out here. I was shaking now. What's under there? His face hardened. Your real memory. We stood in silence, the light flickering from the crack like a pulse. Then, slowly, I stepped toward it. Every cell in my body screamed against it, but I had to know. I dropped to my knees. Gripped the cold metal ring. Lifted the door. A breath of air rose up, hot and sour, like something had been waiting a long time to be let out. Below was a ladder. Iron. Rusted. And at the bottom, a hallway. Concrete. Lit with the same sickly yellow light. Familiar in a way I couldn't place, but my body remembered. I looked back at the man. If I go down there, he nodded, you'll remember everything. And this version of you won't survive it. What does that mean? He hesitated. Then said, it means you'll either become who you were again, or disappear completely. Behind us, the tape recorder clicked back on. Subject shows elevated guilt. If regression continues, full personality collapse is possible. Recommend termination of the simulation. I stared into the hallway below, and took the first step down. The metal ladder groaned beneath me as I climbed down, the sound echoing into the dim, humming corridor below. The air grew thicker with every rung, hot and stale, like I was breathing through gauze soaked in sweat. When my feet hit the concrete floor, the trapdoor slammed shut above me. I didn't look up. I walked. The hallway was long, with smooth, seamless walls that didn't belong beneath an old house. The lighting came from fluorescent panels set into the ceiling, some flickering, some dead, casting everything in that faint, institutional yellow. Like a hospital basement. Or a bunker. Each step I took felt heavy with déjà vu. And then I saw them. Doors. Plain metal ones, evenly spaced along both sides of the hallway. No handles. Just narrow slits, like mail slots. The first one I passed had a number etched above it, C13. And a voice behind the door whispered, "Don't go." I froze. Another door, C12. "Too late to fix it now," came the voice. Soft. Male. Young. The boy. I started walking faster. C11. C10. The whispers grew louder, overlapping. Angry. Sad. Desperate. "Why did you bring me here? You promised it would help. We trusted you." I covered my ears. "Shut up!" I screamed. Silence. Every door went still. Then I heard one voice, familiar, intimate, coming from C07. My voice. Session log 7. Subject still shows resistance to full memory integration. If she continues this pattern, the personality split may become permanent. I pressed my hand to the door, shaking. "I'm recommending memory suppression again. She's not ready." There was a pause. A breath. Then, "God help me, I don't think I'm ready." I turned and ran. Down the corridor, past doors I didn't look at. I knew what was behind them. I felt it. Guilt made flesh. Echoes of choices I couldn't, or wouldn't, face. The hallway ended in another door. Not metal. Not sterile. Wooden. Heavy. Old. And nailed to the center was a familiar object, the guest book. Only now it wasn't dusty or old. It looked brand new. And it was open. I stepped closer, trying not to shake. The page was blank except for one thing. "You may sign to forget again. Or open the door to remember." One last time. I looked around. No one was coming. Not the man in the coat. Not the boy. Just me. At the end of something I'd built. Something that had turned on me. Or maybe, something I'd used until I couldn't bear to live with it. I touched the pen lying across the page. And then I reached for the door. The wood was warm. Pulsing. I pushed it open. Inside was a room filled with mirrors. And every single one of them showed a different version of me. The mirrors didn't reflect the room. They reflected me. But not just me, variations of me. Fractured versions, each one caught mid-movement, mid-expression, mid-something that didn't quite belong to me anymore. Some looked older. Others younger. Some were smiling, lips twitching with barely restrained madness. Others were crying, bruised, hollow-eyed, whispering things I couldn't hear through the glass. There were dozens of them, stretching around the circular room. Each mirror a doorway I hoped was sealed. At the center of the room stood a chair. No straps. No restraints. But everything about it radiated finality. Like I'd sat there before. And would again. I took a slow step toward one of the mirrors near the left. The version of me inside it looked back, but didn't copy me. Her movements were a split second off. She raised her hand before I did. Tilted her head when I stood still. And her eyes, they were full of hate. Not confusion. Not fear. Hate. She mouthed something at me. No sound, just lips moving like she was screaming it. Over and over. "You left me here." I backed away. Another mirror, Claire in a hospital gown, IVs trailing from her arms. her mouth sewn shut, tears streaking her face. Behind her, a shadow. The man in the coat. But this time, he wore my face. No. No, no, no. I spun toward the center, toward the chair, desperate for answers, for an escape, for something. And I saw it now. Etched into the backrest in that same scorched gold script as the guest book. Integration point. A screen behind the chair flickered to life. Footage played. Grainy. Surveillance style. Me, walking down the gravel path to the house. But this time, a full minute before I'd ever arrived. Someone else was already inside. Another Claire. Then another clip. A loop. 4 of me, each sitting at the kitchen table at different times. Drinking coffee. Staring at the basement door. I staggered backward. The screen changed again. A file directory. Hundreds of video logs. All dated. All recorded. All me. I was never just a guest in this house. I was the experiment. And maybe I was the uncle. Or the ghost. Or the thing in the basement whispering in the dark, begging to be remembered. And then, every mirror in the room shattered at once. The sound was deafening. Glass flew in every direction, but I wasn't cut. I was swallowed by it. Sucked inward. Pulled through all the versions of myself. Their screams, their silence, their madness all crashing into me like a wave breaking against bone. And then I was back. Standing. In the living room. Sunlight spilling through the window. Coffee warm in my hand. The house, quiet. Just like the first day. Just like always. The only difference? This time, the basement door was wide open. The coffee in my hand was hot enough to burn, but I didn't drop it. I just stood there, staring at the basement door. Open. No bolts. No lock. No illusion of separation. Just a yawning black void cut into the floor of an otherwise peaceful home. And this time, I remembered. Not all of it, not yet, but enough to know this wasn't the first reset. Or the 10th. I had run this loop so many times the edges of reality were starting to fray. I had built this house. Or rather, a version of me had. Not in wood or brick, but in code, in consciousness, in something much older and more dangerous than either. A memory construct. A psychological cage. And now, the door to the cage was wide open. The mirror room hadn't shown me madness. It had shown me versions. Ghosts of myself left behind after every failed attempt to escape the feedback loop of guilt, of forgetting, of testing. Because that's what this was, wasn't it? A test. And somewhere along the line, the scientist had become the subject. Somewhere, I had stopped running the simulation and started living in it. I placed the coffee down gently. And walked to the basement door. It didn't whisper this time. Didn't creak or breathe or shiver beneath my feet. It was waiting. I stepped through. Down the stairs. Past the empty armchair. Past the peeling walls and the dangling bulb. Deeper than I'd gone before. At the bottom, where there had once been a trapdoor, there was now a screen. Blank. Waiting. It came to life as I approached, flickering like a dying thought. I stood there. Heart thundering. If I chose yes, I might finally end this. End me. Burn it all down. But if I chose no, the simulation would continue. And another Claire, slightly different, slightly weaker, would wake up. Rent the house. Make coffee. Hear her name whispered from the shadows. I looked to my right. And there she was. A new version. Just forming. Like smoke congealing into shape. Younger. Wide-eyed. Still hopeful. Already reaching for the door upstairs. Already thinking, I just need a quiet weekend to clear my head. I looked back at the screen. The blinking cursor pulsed. Then, faintly, from the black behind me, I heard his voice again. Soft. Kind. Terrifying. Choose carefully this time. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred into white noise. My hand hovered over the keyboard, just 2 keys. Y or N. Just a keystroke. But it felt like the weight of my entire soul was in the balance. The new version of me, version 14? 15, was moving now. I could hear her footsteps upstairs, the familiar pattern I knew too well. Couch, fridge, bag drop, pause at the basement door. The sound sent a wave of nausea rolling through me. How many times had I watched her, me, go through this? How many res had I let walk into the fire just to avoid burning myself? The man in the coat was standing beside me now. Closer than before. I didn't need to turn to feel it. He didn't breathe. He didn't shift. He watched. "You always hesitate here," he said. His voice was different this time. Softer. No threat in it. Just exhaustion. Maybe even pity. "How many times have I done this?" I asked. A pause. "You tell me." I squeezed my eyes shut. Images flashed behind my lids. Not memories, echoes. Rooms full of me. Screams that never reached the surface. Cold floors and hot lights. A kid with pale hair reaching for my hand as the simulation reset and left him behind. "I think I made you to control it," I whispered. "To make sure I didn't go too far." "And I did," he said simply. "But now you won't stop it." "No," he agreed. "Because it's not mine to stop." I looked at the screen again. Terminate instance? What happens if I choose Y? I asked. "You erase the structure," he said. "All versions. All fragments. The house collapses. The narrative dies. You forget nothing." "And if I choose N?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped aside. Behind him, where the wall should have been, was a mirror. Just one. Clean. Untouched. And in it, for the first time, I saw myself. Not fractured. Not younger. Not broken or terrified. Whole. And I knew what that meant. Choosing Y would be the end. But choosing N? Would mean going back. Choosing to wake up as her. Again. With all the knowledge. All the memory. Carrying the full weight of every version. The house wouldn't haunt me anymore. I would haunt it. That was the only way to end the loop, by walking through it willingly. Not as a victim. As something else. I looked back at the screen. Took a deep breath. And pressed N. When I pressed N, the screen faded to black, not with a flicker, but with a slow, deliberate dimming. Like the system wasn't shutting down, it was handing over control. And then silence. No alarms. No flashing lights. Just the soft hum of air returning to stillness. Like the simulation, if that's what it ever really was, had finally stopped fighting back. I turned from the screen. The man in the coat was gone. Not walked away, gone. Like he'd never existed, or like his purpose had been fulfilled the moment I stopped asking him to carry the guilt I refused to feel. And then I felt it. All of it. Not like remembering. More like waking up into myself. Every version. Every failed stay. Every half-formed Claire who had walked into this house, half hoping for silence, half terrified of what might speak back. I didn't collapse. I stood taller. The basement faded around me. Not vanished, just peeled away, like a layer of paint sloughing off to reveal the original surface beneath. I was back in the house. Sunlight through the curtains. Coffee warm again. The distant sound of birds outside. But I was not her. Not the frightened girl who needed the guest book to tell her who she was. I remembered everything. I walked to the front door, half expecting it to vanish when I reached for the knob. But it didn't. I opened it. The world outside was quiet. Too quiet. A stage quiet. Like it was still waiting to see who I would become now. And then I saw her. The next version. Claire 16, maybe? Standing at the far end of the gravel path. Bag in hand. Hair windblown. Face tired but hopeful. She looked at the house like it was salvation. I stepped onto the porch. She froze. We locked eyes. I don't know what she saw in me, Maybe a ghost, maybe a warning, maybe herself, but her breath caught in her throat. And I realized then. This time, the loop was different. Because now I could choose. Not just for me, but for all of them. So I spoke. Only 2 words. Calm. Clear. Final. Don't stay. She dropped her bag. Took a step back. And ran. No reset. No fade. Just a door left open, swinging in the wind. Behind me, the house groaned. Not angry. Not alive. Empty. I stepped back inside, closed the door, and picked up the guest book one last time. The page was blank. I didn't write my name. I didn't need to. Instead, I walked into the kitchen. Sat at the table. Let the sunlight touch my face. And for the first time in 1,000 iterations I felt it. Peace. Real peace. Because the house hadn't been haunted. I had. And now? I was free.